coming off of March Madness. Like everything was just like boom, 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 boom.
Sports business moves pretty quickly, right? I mean, people change jobs, their teams win championships, all kinds of crazy things happen. So every once in a while, it makes sense to check in with someone that we've done an episode with before. And this time, we're checking in with episode 34 guest, Tamzin Barriolhet, now Director of Global Sports Marketing for Under Armour. Enjoy. First of all, Tamzin Barriolhet, do I have your permission to record?
Yes, you do.
I mean,
has anyone ever said to you like no after you hit the record button?
I've had people weirdly hesitate.
Like,
just like, well, I mean, what am I going to do now? I mean, if you don't give me that permission, it's going to be like, and that's it. This is your first 30-second podcast episode we've ever had in our life. Like we've been talking about, we got a lot to catch up on, right? Because a lot's happened. I mean, we first did an episode, I don't know, it was like 2 years ago, I think. It's kind of where
it was right before I had Sophie, so it would have been October of 23, I think.
All right, so what you just did is you're doing some foreshadowing to a lot of what we're going to be talking about today with that name drop, the Sophie name drop. But we're going to cover other things before we get there because I mean, professionally, this has been a robust period of time for you. So let's start off with the promotion. First of all, congratulations. Moving from senior lead of global sports marketing to now director of sports marketing for Under Armour. So how do the responsibilities change for the new role?
Previous role was more hyper focused on certain sport categories, which were basketball, American football, and volleyball. And still through the global lens and sort of oversight across all different types of partnerships, whether that be athletes, teams, leagues, properties, and anything sort of youth, UA Next, grassroots related.
Yeah.
The role now is really sort of oversight over everything to an extent when it comes to sports marketing, and really sort of being the right-hand person to my senior vice president and sort of his, sounding board, strategic partner. There's obviously a lot of ground and a lot of territories and regions to cover. So there's enough work for certainly the two of us to handle and partner on. So yeah, just really supporting Sean Egger in sort of those endeavors and working with our different counterparts and teammates that are more than structured into the categories and into the regions, and having a little bit of a accountability and exchange with them of like, here's what we're setting out as our sort of global strategy. As you guys get more into the tactics of your sport or your region, they sort of have to like pitch back to us, work with us, workshop it with us as they're building those strategies and tactics and making sure that it sort of feels in alignment with where we want to take things.
Making sure that they're focusing on the partnership aspect of the whole thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Are there certain sports? So you go from three to all of the sports. Are there certain ones that you're particularly excited to get your hands on that maybe you looked at from a distance before because it just wasn't in your purview?
Yeah, definitely the running space is somewhere where I haven't had much experience or knowledge, enough to be like dangerous, but not like
welcome to my world.
Weeds. Yeah, not enough in the weeds, especially as it relates to, talent identification and, different types of things that really sort of move the needle in and all the different types of running spaces that are out there. All of those have different approaches. So I've been learning a lot about that recently and have some incredible teammates who are sort of really at the center of it every day, who have been super helpful in bringing me up to speed.
Yeah.
We also created a new sort of category at Under Armour based on some strategic direction, which is sportswear and collaborations, which is more sort of in the, the space where Under Armour hasn't honestly been as much or focused on as it relates to more the lifestyle fashion side of sport. We've been very high focused on performance. And so
they're inseparable now, though, aren't they?
They very much are. And now there's a big opportunity for UA to sort of put their stamp on what does that mean for our brand. And that also halos into sports marketing and how do you find the right individuals, whether they
Yeah.
be athletes or not, to sort of bring that side of the business to life. And then the other aspect that we're, also going to be sort of really focusing on is taking a sort of a second look or a deeper look, or even really, I should call it an evolution to everything grassroots. In our world, we call it UA Next, which is everything
Hmm.
we do in the youth space and how
Yep.
we now take that to the next level. So I'm going to have a lot of my work is going to be sort of leaning into that team and pushing them to sort of, build out what's the next vision of where we want to take that globally. And then the last one I'll say is really the influencer and entertainment side of things, where again, hasn't really been a huge focus at UA. We've had some dibs and dabs into it here and there and different sides of it. But again, trying to help the team now build what is a true strategy around that approach,
Yeah.
and bringing in experts to help us think through it. And then again, find what is the point of view for Under Armour, right? We're not trying to necessarily do and copy what everyone else is doing. And so we're really going through some thorough work right now to
Yeah.
identify like what's our move there.
So other than that, not much.
No, not
It's
much.
pretty quiet. Pretty quiet. Well, I guess it's like it has to be kind of. I mean, from outside the walls of the headquarters, it seems like Under Armour is, after maybe, I don't want to say losing their mojo, but maybe wandering in the desert for a few years as the brand. It feels like maybe things are tracking in a better way than they have in the past. I mean, one of the examples I think we've talked about previously was being back on the field with the NFL again. It sort of speaks to, okay, we were looking around for a bit, but now we've got our feet firmly in the ground and moving forward. Can you talk a little bit about what the vibe in Baltimore is right now and what the sort of sense is inside the building?
Yeah, there's definitely a good feel of we're gaining momentum, we're stacking some wins, we're starting to line up where we ultimately should be.
Yeah,
And there's certainly a lot of ground to still that has to be done and a lot of work to do. But there was a significant shift in leadership in the last, basically year across key areas of our business. And we went through a whole reorg and restructure. And those things take time. They
yeah, they
take
do.
time to trickle with the size of the company that we have.
That's not just
Um,
flicking a switch.
it's not, and there's obviously like still things happening as you're restructuring that still have to get done. And so you really don't actually start seeing the results of that probably a year would be like really, really fast. So
Yeah,
probably 2 to maybe 3 years, quite honestly.
right.
And we're sort of at the very infancy stages of like that restructure now, sort of starting to have an impact on the moves that we're making in terms of partnerships, the product that you're going to start seeing more and out in the marketplace. So I'd say like you haven't seen all the results of that yet. It's really at its sort of baby stages, and which is exciting for the brand to know that there's upside coming and that people are noticing even already in such sort of an early phase of this transition that we're going through.
It is hard when you're doing a big reorg like that because it is so disruptive to what you're doing, and you become very focused on the internal aspects of it and the changes that are going on, the new people associated with that. That it has to be sort of gratifying to get to the other end of it and start to see the results of what can be a really difficult period to
Yeah.
start bearing fruit.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think that's certainly what our leadership has been, talking through and almost reminding people like, yes, we're going through a lot. Yes, it's been a rough, few years or months or however long certain people have been there around for quite some time.
Yeah.
But there's a good energy right now. Things are picking up. The We moved into a new building in January and it's absolutely stunning. And there's a little bit of a sense of like new house, new us kind of thing where we're sort of gaining momentum by also being a lot more around each other.
Oh
The
yeah.
ways of working and all that also play into it. And I know there's so much debate about remote and hybrid and in person. And I think, there was certainly the realities of COVID and that and what it did to a lot of people, myself included, when it
Sure.
came to uh, the psyche of it, I think, of being around people and all that. And I think as human beings, are now sort of coming out of that. And companies are, to an extent, also realizing like there is a
Reaping the
huge,
benefits associated with it. There is an
yeah,
element
there
of
is
having people together and having those water cooler
100%,
talks and sort of the concussiveness of just
100%.
being around, right? I mean,
Yeah, even just like, hey, can I get this from you? And instead of it being an email or setting up a meeting, like you can just walk over and quickly, yeah, so
God, not
there's
another Zoom.
yeah, or another Teams or whatever. So there are some efficiencies. Absolutely, it's undeniable. And so yes, the obviously having a new building meant there was a little bit more of a push from leadership to make sure that we were in the building.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We just made this building for you. Better come in.
yeah, so we are actually going to go back to 4 days a week starting in the fall.
Okay.
Which again, like some people
Adjustment.
may push back or
Yeah.
feel it might be an adjustment, but we went from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, so
The
it's
progression.
I don't anticipate us going back to 5. I think 4 is probably a good happy medium for everything and
Yeah.
everyone. But yeah, so that is happening too.
Let's talk about Unrivaled, because I know, and people just need to get a big smile on your face when you think about Unrivaled, because I know this was something that was really, this is your baby for a
Yeah.
while. Can you talk a little bit about Unrivaled and what went into bringing that partnership to life for both the league and for Under Armour?
Yeah. So the conversations between myself and Unrivaled started when they had sort of made an initial teaser announcement, and this was the summer of 23, I think. I mean, it was around WNBA All-Star in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had an initial conversation with Alex Zell, the president, and a couple of their investors and sort of commercial partners that were sort of there, sort of starting to socialize it with brands that were ultimately all activating and in and around the All-Star weekend.
Did you reach out
Um,
to them or did they reach out to you?
I reached out to them
Yeah, okay.
actually via
So
one of
you
my
knew this was
agency
going to be
partners.
of interest.
Well, I knew I was interested. I hadn't had the chance to
Okay, right.
socialize it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
needed to sort of like gauge what was really happening, get a download. And one of my agency partners, Excel, who we work with very closely,
Mm-hmm.
they represent Nafisa Collier. And so I had asked if I could get basically put in touch with Alex because I did not know him at the time. And yeah, that's kind of how it started. So initial conversation, sort of, an intro pitch deck from them, just really sort of introductory overview of what they were trying to get going. And the reality was the idea and the concept of what they were trying to do is something that just felt very Under Armour to me
It
with,
did.
you know, kind of like building something from the ground up that was going to be disruptive, but in a positive way, that was going to have hopefully, a very strong impact on the women's game, that it was going to provide all these tools to help these athletes improve on their game and continue to work. And then on top of that, have the ability to stay in market and, you know, market themselves in a different way than they've been able to because they're always sort of off radar for 6 months, 7 months out of the year. So there was a strong appeal for me to kind of bring this back to Under Armour. And funnily enough, we'd been having conversations internally about women's hoops and trying to figure out like what we could do to try and help ultimately what was going on, which was lack of access to facilities and their off season and having to go back to their high school gyms or their
Right.
colleges and all that, which
Yeah.
again, nothing wrong with that to an extent, but when you know what the men have access to and can afford, it obviously you start scratching your head a little
It's a
bit.
bit of a
So
discrepancy.
exactly. So we had conversations with actually the league, the WNBA, about this idea that we had, which was around creating an off-season center for the players.
Mm-hmm.
But there was obviously a number of, not that they didn't agree to it or didn't want to do it, conflict of interest for them
Sure.
with the Nike partnership that they have. And so it's just not something that was going to be able to be done, at least through with the partnership or the
Yeah,
support of
too
the
tight a
league.
needle to thread.
Yeah. So it was just kind of the timing of it all. And Alex was, I really took to him and his passion for trying to upstart, which was, his wife and business partner's vision. And I'm obviously a former basketball player myself. So there was definitely like my own personal, like wanting to do something for the game that I love myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to, take all the information. And then it was about a good year from then when things really started to pick up. But there was a lot of conversations in between.
Yeah.
They obviously had to do a lot of groundwork to get their funding all the way through,
Right.
get all the investors lined up, the media rights deal. So it really took off internally for me, I'd say like spring, summer of last year, which would have been like June, yeah, May, June, July. I can't remember exactly, where conversations picked up. And then once Unrivaled truly almost like all the dots connected, right? So like Caitlin Clark goes to WNBA numbers through the roof. Like all these things were like, coming off of March Madness, like everything was just like boom, 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 boom. And like the timing of it, and everybody was just talking about women's basketball so much that like when I packaged it all together to leadership, there was just it was almost like impossible for them to say no
It
to.
was a little bit of serendipity, yeah. It's funny the way that works, right? Because it can work so well on a strategic, and you can have such a clear vision on why it works. But you still sometimes have to rely on the movement in the market that happens organically outside of what you're
100%.
planning. It's funny, right?
100%. 100%. And especially, I mean, look, it's the reality. Like when it comes to women's sports, even with all the momentum that's happening, there's still a lot of like pushing that has to be done to get things over the finish line. And so that momentum that was happening in the marketplace helped greatly. The media rights deal and Turner coming in and signing multi-year partnership with them was another
Yeah, it's
big
a big
moving
one.
needle.
Yeah.
Because obviously the sustain, the not the fact that it was going to be on broadcast, but the fact that they were going to have those dollars to
It's
support
a
the league to
it's a
sustain
validator from an
itself.
economic
It's a
standpoint.
validator.
Yeah.
It's a validator too with, call it, more traditional marketers as well.
100% yes.
Yeah.
And you have to
So
have that. I mean,
anyways,
it's what part of the thing that gets the ball rolling. It can be frustrating
yes.
sometimes that we're still making decisions based on its ability to be on, call it traditional media,
Yeah.
because that's not necessarily what's leading the cart these days. But I mean, I get it, right? And for certain groups of people, that's with
Yeah.
as much gray hair as I have, that's kind of the one of the things that they look that are
Yeah.
that need to be. Just is.
Yeah. No, that's very much the truth. And then, a lot of back and forth conversations, negotiations
Oh yeah.
happened, and we pretty much came to terms late October of 24, basically early November. And then we had about 6 to 7 weeks to pull off product and outfitting and assorting a whole league with three major holidays, factory shutdowns.
Perfect timeline. Perfect. Because I
Perfect.
know how
Yes.
much that 6 7 weeks is just an eternity for a sportswear brand.
Yeah. I say I became best friends with my product team.
Yeah, I will bet you
uh,
did. But like when that thing crosses the finish line and you think about that journey from first Funk reaching out like, hey, can you put me in touch with someone regarding this new league to my guy, we're developing the outfits for it. Can you give a sense of that,
mhm.
your emotional stake in that
Yeah.
process?
It honestly, it didn't hit me till I was there for their home
Yeah.
opening weekend, and I was just like sitting there, and it was all happening, and I was like, wow, we did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and I say we because although yes, I certainly was the point guard and getting this done and pushed a lot of people to give me the okay to do it. the reality is it took a village to get that
That's right.
product on the court for
Nothing
a
happens by
January
yourself.
2nd
No.
media day. And a lot of people worked tirelessly through holidays and all that kind of stuff behind the scenes to get things going. So yeah, I sat there and I just didn't necessarily have a tear in my eye, but I was like, I had like kind of like knots in my stomach of
Little knot in your
wow, like
throat, kind of
this,
like, wow.
yeah, like this is happening.
Yeah.
And my leadership came down for that opening weekend and almost like a good validating, like, no, you were right. This is absolutely amazing. And we're so proud to be a part of it. Like, thank you for pushing us kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that definitely made me feel reassured me that, you know, the fight was absolutely worth it.
Yeah, because I'm assuming there were some days along the lines, along the path, where you were like, I don't know what I've really gotten myself into here. Yeah.
Certainly,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And the back and forth,
Yeah.
the song and dance internally, song and dance with Unrivaled. Obviously, you know, it's business is business, and
Oh, yeah, it's
everybody's
three-dimensional chess.
try to get, yeah,
Yeah.
get every more out of everyone. So no, we landed in a great place. It's an amazing partnership. Unrivaled's been incredible to work with. They are really just setting the tone on how to do things differently, uniquely, how to leverage players in a different way, how to engage like their social content. It's been absolutely like wow. I've been
Next
so
level.
impressed with how they've yeah, just put a fun twist on a professional league, but still keeping it competitive and serious. And you know, and I think people who love basketball have really taken to it. The branding looks just sleek and clean, and I think for Under Armour, what it's done really is it's a lot of I think eyes turned a little bit that we sort of you know were the first to do this and become do something historic, quite honestly, when it comes to women, when we're traditionally very much known as a male sort of dominant brand, and we're starting to see some positive brand sentiment that's coming out of this partnership. And I think yeah, I'm very humbled by the fact that I was able to play a part in it, and I can't wait to do more with it. Like this next, you know, off season for them, we're going to be doing some fun stuff, and obviously, certainly as we head into their second season.
So clearly, a lot of professional excitement going on. But as we alluded to at the top of the conversation, that's mirrored by personal excitement, I would imagine, with the arrival of Sophie, your daughter. So congratulations there. I guess I just really have
Yeah.
one question. What position are you already beginning to train her for basketball? Like what do you
I
see
mean,
her role?
right now, all around player. Like, you
Really?
know, working on both hands, you know, uh
So for those who don't know, how old is Sophie now?
she's 17 months.
17 months, right? So you got to get the ambidextrous behavior in early, like
Yes,
hold the bottle with the
absolutely.
left, hold the bottle with the right,
Yeah.
crossover with the binky kind of
Yeah.
things, right? So,
We have hoops in multiple areas of our house. We have one in the bathtub, we have one in her playroom, like living room area. There's one in her bedroom. So yeah, constantly hand eyeball coordination happening at all
so what's
times.
your response going to be when she says, I'm really just interested in playing the clarinet?
It'll be fine. I'll get over it, I'm sure. No, but the funny thing is she's obsessed with balls. And
Oh yeah.
we went to the park in my neighborhood the other day, and there was a bunch of like 20-year-old guys playing soccer in the fields, and she started yelling at them like ball, ball. And I speak to her in French, so she was actually saying ballon, which is like the you know French word, and they were just looking at her like so confused.
Like what is going on
And
here?
then she had a full-on tantrum because she couldn't get the ball and like flailing her arms and was like all upset because she wanted that one. She didn't want to use hers anymore. She wanted that one.
I'm assuming
So,
somewhere her grandmother is excited to watch what's going on with all of this and seeing, like,
oh yeah,
recognizing that you
yes.
were probably the exact same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. My dad keeps saying like he's like this is karma paying back for because
Yeah,
I was a bit of a
exactly.
wild child. So
Tamzin Barriolhet, she is now the director of global sports marketing for Under Armour. Thanks for spending the time. Good to catch up.
good to see you too.